Hi, I'm Jude from headfi.org, and on this episode of headfi TV, we have a special guest today. I think if you imagine his face in a tiny little discussion forum avatar from headfi or from Drop's discussion forums, you may recognize Will Bright from Drop, formerly Mass Drop. Thanks for coming.
Oh, my pleasure, man. It's good to be here.
All right, so I want to start off with what you do at Drop, because I think a lot of people know you, see you, interact with them, but they don't necessarily know your role. Maybe some of them do. So
yeah, for sure. So I'm one of the founders of the company, and I'm a chief product officer at Drop. So everything that we make in collaboration with our brand partners or directly with our manufacturing partners is in my purview. I manage all the things that we make.
Oh, that's a lot of stuff.
It can be.
That's a lot of
stuff. It's
a
lot of fun.
Yeah. Now you start really on headfi. He violated our terms of service. Many years ago. He registered when he was about nine years old. We didn't know, and the statute of limitations has passed, so I can't ban him for that. But anyways, all kidding aside, he registered when he was like 9 years old. You've been a member of the community ever since. Audio, I think, is obviously a huge part of what Drop is and what Drop does. Maybe, I'm guessing probably because you. But correct me if I'm wrong. I mean, you probably really helped them focus on audio early on.
Yeah, no, I mean, you're not wrong. You know, at the beginning of the company, you know, there was focus on a few different areas, but the audiophile community really embraced what we were doing overall, and it was also a community that, you know, I understood very well. And so as far as the initial desires and wants of the community, things like that were immediately clear, you know, products they would want to buy, things like that, because obviously at the beginning of Drop, it was mostly about sourcing third-party products, and then as we grew as a company, it became more about developing products in collaboration with those partners and developing products to meet the needs of the community broadly. But yeah, I mean, definitely the affinity that I had towards the audiophile community had a huge influence on the fact that, you know, it became one of the largest sections of Drop.
Yeah, and it still is, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Audiophile is one of the largest communities in the platform.
All right, cool. So that's kind of neat. So yeah, 9 years old is when he registered. So now let's talk about what you're introducing. It's obviously in front of us here.
Man, so this headphone is the Drop Plus THX Panda. This is a fully wireless audiophile system. What that means is that, you know, we've got the full signal path in this. We haven't compromised on anything. On the chipset side, with the latest Qualcomm chipset supporting aptX HD, aptX Adaptive, and Sony LDAC. That pipes the sound to an implementation of the THX-AAA amplifier architecture. And then finally, with that clean amplification, it delivers the audio to the Oppo PM3 driver, which is what we're using as the basis for the design of Panda. Now, we have changed that driver in a couple of small ways to achieve some slight changes to the frequency response and overall distortion characteristics, but fundamentally, if you were trying to find an analogous driver and headphone, the PM3 would be the closest.
So let's not let that one just slide right by. The PM3 is probably one of the most well-regarded closed-back planar magnetic headphones, certainly in a small form factor. There was almost nothing like it, really, if you think about it when it was out. Very well-regarded. It's and to be clear, this is a planar magnetic headphone, and it's a wireless planar magnetic headphone, certainly not a common thing to see in a wireless headphone, a planar magnetic driver. So tell us now, let's talk about the sonic goals. I mean, you developed this headphone. I want to say something, though. As someone who's been on the forum since you were so young, what this product kind of represents to me, and hopefully we have a chance to talk more about kind of what's in it. I think you've just touched on some of it. The Panda reminds me of what might happen if a headfire had a capital, manufacturing partners, technology, you know, essentially just deep pockets and a lot of resources to create a product that he or she would want. Well, most headfires are dudes, so that he would want most likely. That's kind of how I feel this product came about, and some of the other ones that you've done as well. So yeah, tell us more about the Panda and what's in it.
Yeah, fundamentally, I mean, everything that we do at Drop is derived from the community, right? So instead of having a team together that sits around and says, oh, we think this would be fun, or we think that'll be fun, what it comes down to is what's being discussed, what's being asked for. And what we saw over the course of years was over and over and over people wanting to have the convenience of a wireless headphone, you know, those really nice commuter headphones that are designed with long battery life and, you know, effective isolation and things like that. But you know, the constant problem was the compromise on the audio side, right? Those things, that long battery life, that isolation, it would generally come along with, you know, a lackluster sound signature, to be honest, right? Or a heavy reliance on DSP to achieve a desirable sound. With Panda, we've achieved, in right now, what is a fully acoustic tuning, a sound signature that at a baseline, we start off with neutral mids. We move to have really strong emphasis in the bass. Not we feel too strong, we feel it's tastefully done, but an emphasis there nonetheless. And then as well, one of the primary things that we saw as a complaint around the PM3 and the way that driver sounded was it was a little dark, right? So we worked with the designers to amplify the high end just slightly to bring it sort of close to that edge, close to that level of detail that we want to represent. So in short, neutral through the mids, a little bit of emphasis on the bass, a little bit of emphasis on the high end, but overall we're keeping it pretty tight.
All right, so I think the bass emphasis is very tastefully done. Now it might be reasonably said that I'm kind of an audiophile bass head. I don't like crazy bass by any stretch, but I do like some emphasis for sure, and this definitely has a very tastefully done emphasis. Great control, by the way. I still think it's very good control. And on the treble, I don't find it bright, but yet it is detailed, so I'll give you that. I think your description of it is very accurate. Now, one of the things I want to really emphasize here is what you mentioned, the fact that it's acoustically tuned. It's default tuning, what it comes with right now. It's a default tuning that is purely acoustically tuned. When you talk about tuning the treble up from the PM3's level of treble, you're not talking about turning it up in DSP or having the amplifier made a little bit brighter or having it tipped up. This is done entirely acoustically right now, which I think is very important because a lot of wireless headphones are tuned electronically. So the DSP, the electronics, determine the sound signature, the tonal balance of the headphone. When you acoustically tune something, and I think that's fine, by the way, but it's better, in my opinion, and more ideal to properly acoustically engineer it to the target sound. And then from there, you can do other things with it if you want. So if you want to offer DSP tunings in the future, which maybe you will, depending on what the demand is, you have a more solid acoustically engineered foundation to build from. Anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the software that we have built in here is user upgradable, and the chipset supports DSP. So if there are enough requests in the future, it's definitely something that we could explore adding. Again, like you mentioned, starting from the baseline of proper acoustic tuning, in our opinion, is key as well.
Yeah.
But giving people the ability to adjust it to their liking, add some salt to the meal, etc. That's totally something that we'd be willing to do if there's enough interest.
Okay, cool. Another big benefit I want to mention, by the way, of that approach, which I love, is the battery dead passive use. So there are some wireless headphones that do offer passive mode, but if they were tuned electronically, you can always tell, because when you go into the passive mode, they sound atrocious. And this does not. This sounds wireless. The tuning is the same wireless or wired, correct?
Yeah.
And I guess that makes sense given the fact that you've chosen such transparent amplification, that you're using the codecs you're using. And I want to talk now about the measurements. So you didn't seem as surprised as I did, but yet you're still impressed by what we saw. So for those of you who don't know, we have a state-of-the-art audio, headphone, and electronic measurement system here at HeadFi's offices. And we measured the Panda. And to me, more impressive than the frequency response remaining the same was the THD, the total harmonic distortion, is pretty much exactly the same whether wired or wireless, which is really impressive when you consider the difference. What's happening when you're going wireless? I'm broadcasting from the transmitter, in this case the analyzer, but usually a phone, to the headphone, right? There's digital to analog conversion going on inside, right? Versus when we're going passive, it's purely analog. And the THD is exactly the same, which speaks to the transparency of everything going on, right, in the path.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's groovy. Again, you don't seem so surprised, although you were impressed by what we saw. I was very surprised by that, because to switch the THD back and forth and look, and they're like exactly the same, I thought was very cool.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely pleased that on the off chance you do run out of battery, that you're able to keep enjoying it. And the other thing, too, to consider there is, not only is it about enjoying it if you do run past that 30 hours of battery, but it's also about sort of the scalability and sort of enjoyment of it throughout the audiophile hobby, right? As someone who's been in the community a long time, you can go look at my desk, ton of different amplifiers on it. Depends on what type of flavor of sound I want that time, how I want it to feel, what I want it to look like, how I want it to fit. And this headphone, by having acoustic tuning, you're able to enjoy some of that scaling sort of new gear combination that maybe isn't otherwise really feasible with some of the other wireless headphones.
Because it is tuned as a passive headphone first. So here's the question for you on that. You mentioned scaling. On HeadFi, we talk about that a lot, the scalability of a headphone. You're working with the PM3 driver as the foundation. Very respected headphone, planar magnetic. What's the scalability like, in your opinion? I'm asking you as a headfire here. You've been registered on the forum since you were 9 years old, putting you on the spot. From a scalability standpoint, how does it do?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, you know, the community will be the judge.
Oh, cop-out answer. Come on, hold you to this one, man.
No, what I will say is that, you know, the PM3 is part of the same family as the PM1 and the PM2, sure. Right? It's the same platform, it's the same structure. So rest assured, it's a scalable headphone. Right. You know, and the gear that I've enjoyed it with, I've definitely had some fun plugging it into.
All right, good enough answer.
A few good things here and there. So.
All right, I haven't played with it enough passively, so I'm going to do that. But I trust it will be, because you're starting with the PM3 and you've even then improved it still. So that's cool. So what else can you tell us about? What are some other key points we have to know about the Panda?
Yeah, well, so obviously we covered the sound and the key sort of nature of that. But the big thing in audiophile land that I experience as, you know, a member of the community and that we see voiced over and over in the discussions is, you know, oftentimes an audio company will hit the sound really well, but that will come at the expense of usability or convenience, right? There will be other compromises that come along with that better sound. With Panda, we think that we've changed this from a compromise to more of a shift, right? So with this headset, you have 30 hours of battery life, and that 30 hours is tested at 85% of maximum volume. This isn't, you know, your miles per hour going 50 on a flat surface, et cetera, et cetera. Now, this is 85% listening volume, and for what it's worth, for me, I don't really go past 65% for comfortable listening, and I listen fairly loud. The amplifier in this is quite strong. It's a very efficient driver. The battery life is a critical feature at 30 plus hours. The other thing, too, to consider with the battery is that, again, on the off chance you do run out, it does have quick charge, so 15 minutes will get you 3+ hours of time, you know, using the headset. So that usability feature on the battery life side is really critical. A few other things to consider too is, you know, the design. So we designed the product to be really robust. We saw a lot of discussions around single gimbal headphones, so single-sided yokes, the sort of stress points that they experience, you know, where they tend to fail. And so we've constructed all of the yoke out of cast aluminum, including all of the pieces on the internals of this hinge. So again, you know, really robust design, cast aluminum, and then plastic elsewhere for the weight, of course. You know, the protein leather that we're using on the ear pads is, you know, critical for the sound, but also is a really nice breathable material, so these are comfortable for long flights, everything like that. The acoustic isolation of the headset is also a really important point. So this is a fully sealed headphone, it's fully closed, so really strong acoustic isolation, and also really strong isolation the other way. You know, you're not going to be blasting music into your office as you're walking around listening to these. You know, the design of the headband is, you know, subtle but an important point. You know, you can sort of see this curve here. Overall, this is designed so that when it's sitting on your neck, it sits and remains comfortable, sort of against the back of your neck.
You mean like so when I'm not listening to it?
Yeah, exactly. So when you're not listening to it and sitting like this, you know, the headset sort of sits really nicely against your neck. And another thing too is that we've structured the ear cups so that they return to their neutral position automatically. And what this means when it's at rest is that instead of having it, you know, encroaching on your neck space with these ear pad pieces, it's sort of offering more room there. So, you know, small thing, and obviously mileage may vary as it relates to head shapes and sizes, but we're really pleased about the ergonomics of that and the tests that we've done so far. Another thing that's really important to note is that this does have stereo mics, so dual mics on the right ear cup, you know, useful for communication, everything like that, virtual assistant access, all that. And then the other thing too is worth noting is the control scheme. So what we saw is a lot of discussion around people finding sort of issue with unintuitive touch control schemes or touch control schemes that get actuated elsewhere, and a lot of requests for physical controls, but within the discussions around physical controls, complexity was a big issue, right? So having tons of buttons all over it that do different things, it's hard to remember what function does what things. So we centralized all of the controls for Panda into this control stick right here. So, you know, up is volume up, down is volume down, right? Next track, reverse track, etc. You know, play pause, tap it again for virtual assistant. You know, all the simple controls all built into this. Let's see.
The audio cues.
Oh yeah, thanks
Audio
thanks
cues
for the reminder.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has very unique audio cues. So there's a wireless headphone that I was using recently and complaining about how loud its audio cues were, and they were unpleasant. In the Panda, you have some very cool audio cues that are very you know, they're not in English. No. They're just cool sounds, but they're very intuitive. So power on, power off. I mean, they sound like power on, power off. Pairing sounds like something that you'd expect to hear when pairing. very cool audio cues, very unique actually.
Yeah, thanks. Those are all custom designed for drop. They're designed on modular synths. Actually, it's a modular synth sound.
Yeah, that kind of sounds
because
like
all the
cool.
audio nerds, we all care about that kind of thing. So the audio cues are a nice touch as well. And then the design thinking continues to the included accessories, right? We're building a race car, so we want to put the weight in the engine, so to say. Included accessories are relatively sparse in the course of like a $400 headphone.
Right.
But you have this case, and the case is designed really carefully so that you don't have to constantly be bringing the headphone back to its smallest state, right? I use the headphone mostly fully extended, and that fits perfectly into the case, regardless of the state of extension. And it's designed, again, to be secure, even if you are using the smallest level. So some careful design thought process was put into making the case what it is. And then, the included accessories that come with it, obviously, are a case to use it in passive mode, and then a USB-C cable for charging, of course. So, yeah, I mean, we're just really excited that we've been able to bring together all of these different sort of disparate requests from the audiophile community. We'd love a case that we didn't have to adjust the headphone for. We'd love it if the PM3 was a little bit less dark. We'd love it if there was a wireless headphone that integrated amplifier technology well. All of these things coming together in the Panda is what's really exciting about this project for us. So often when we work with partners, there's a limit to how ambitious we can be because of the level of investment they have. When we work with a partner, they already have a product plan in place for where they're going to spend their resources that year. So it's incredible that they're willing to dedicate resources and effort to working with us on these projects. But again, in order to do something this ambitious, we needed to work with a couple of really specific partners, plan really far in advance, and we're really glad that we've been able to achieve what we have with Panda.
Yeah, I'm actually very, very excited about this. I do think that's thoughtful, actually, by the way, the whole not having, because my head is, I'm a short guy, but I have a very large skull. So I usually have it extended, maybe out to nearly the largest setting or the largest setting. And I like the fact that, I mean, for almost every other headphone that you use that has a case, like you mentioned, have to shrink it down.
You keep having to adjust it. It's no fun.
Yeah. Now the partnership, I did want to just say one more thing about the partnership. In the name, it is Drop plus THX Panda. Mm-hmm. THX obviously being the partner. I'm very excited about that because it's using the AAA circuit, right? And here at the lab, we actually use a AAA-based lab amp that they built for us. It's the quietest, lowest distortion anything I've ever measured before. So I'm excited to know that there's some sort of junior version of it inside a wireless headphone. I guess looking at the measurements we saw today, it actually works. When you think about that, right? Yeah. It's part of an entire system that actually works.
Well, the passive mode is coming out of the AAA test rig, right? So therefore,
yeah, it's coming out of yeah.
It's apples to apples, about as close as you're gonna get.
Yeah, in a sense, yeah. So and then we're going to a AAA through a wireless configuration. So that was very cool. Anyways, yeah, very thoughtful product. Certainly, as headfires go, as headphone enthusiasts go, audiophiles, I think it's probably one of the most thoughtful, maybe the most thoughtful wireless headphone we've seen so far when it comes to us. So very, very cool. I'm very excited about that. When's it coming out?
So we're going to be making it available for pre-orders in June. Those will ship a little bit into early summer, we're thinking right now. We've got to finalize those dates, but pre-orders available at the end of January via a campaign on Drop and Indiegogo, and then with those orders shipping early summer. The MSRP for the product is $400, $399, and for those people who are joining in the pre-order period, there will be some price incentives, because they're waiting longer and things like that.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sounds very reasonable to me, and it's so far so good. I'm definitely wanting to use it wired now because it's been very impressive wirelessly. So cool. You're leaving that here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, really. So, all right. Well, Will, thanks for coming out to HeadFi HQ and introducing us to the Panda. That's I think you got a winner on your hands.
Oh, thanks, man.
All right.
Do our best.
Again, thanks to Will Bright for coming by HeadFi HQ. All day that day, we chatted, we listened to audio, we measured stuff in our measurement lab, and it was a fun visit. Now, while I still haven't had a chance to use the Panda wired with a lot of gear yet, I have been using it with FiiO's new flagship portable player, the M15, and the Panda sounds fantastic wired, driven by the FiiO M15. Again, keep in mind, the Drop plus THX Panda has a richer tonal balance. So if you're looking for something that's super neutral in the bass, flat, or leaner, then you may need to EQ your system a bit. Now, I'm good with the emphasis because I tend to like a bit of lift down low, especially for headphones I use on the go. The mids are linear, and as Will mentioned, they tuned in nice treble presence. The Panda also has some of the very lowest total harmonic distortion we've measured from a headphone yet, and that very low distortion, and its frequency response as well, is the same whether going wireless or wired, and that's fantastic stuff. Anyway, that's the Drop plus THX Panda wireless headphone. Thanks for watching this episode of HeadFi TV. I'll see you next time and on the forums at headfi.org.